Full Debate, we asked when Anthony Horowitz was 13, what did his mother gift him? We gave you a human skull, a sword, or a taxidermy cat. Actually, it's the first one. It's a human skull. That's the perfect introduction. Hello, Anthony Horowitz. Welcome to the show.
It's lovely to be back, Jeremy.
And so you are one of the, I believe, the greatest living writers. There's no question about it. This is book, we'll talk about it in a second. I think it's book 59?
I think so, yes.
Wow! Sorry, or what? Let me not... we'll come back to this, all right? So, everyone has an inspiration, and it sounds like you've got this skull that's telling you to keep writing.
Well, it is. It does remind me. It's a sort of memento mori. Keep going, keep writing faster. All too soon, you're going to look like that. So it sits behind my desk. I have it to this day.
Do you think all writers have something back in in their childhood which says, you are a writer?
Well, I certainly knew I was going to be a writer when I was 10 years old. I had a pretty miserable childhood one way and another, horrible school, all the rest of it. And it was while I was at school that I discovered the school library, books, reading, The Great Escape, and it was then telling stories to the other children at the school, in dormitories at night, boarding school, that I started to make friends. And so I knew age 10 that's what I was going to do.
Wow. And because Stephen King says that his thing was when they tried to do back in the day with an ear syringe, they would get the wax out of your ear by putting an actual needle in, and they went straight through his eardrum.
Oh, my God.
And he said that's when he became a horror writer. So I think the skull is your thing. Anyway, look, let me show the book here. It's important. I won't call it number 59. It's actually really number 5, because this is this amazing series, just to show how creative Anthony is, where Anthony, as the writer, arrives inside the plot of his own book, correct?
The detective Hawthorne has hired a writer to write about him.
Yes.
And the writer he has chosen is me, so I'm Watson to his Holmes. That's exactly right.
But the interesting thing is that although the writer is all-powerful, things come as a bit of a revelation to you.
No, I've gone from being the cleverest person, who is a writer who knows who the killer is before the killer commits a crime, to being, let us be honest, the most stupid person in the book, who is always the sidekick. Watson wasn't stupid, but Hastings to Poirot, was always a little bit on the dim side.
Yeah. So the thing I love about this is, and I'm wondering whether this might even be roughly based on your own life, because it's got I don't know where exactly you live, Anthony, but you're somewhere near the river.
I have recently moved to Richmond upon Thames.
And this is somewhere...
And this close, Riverview Close, where this story... It's a nasty...
OK, I didn't want to out you.
It's a neighbour story, and it takes place in Richmond, about 10 minutes from where I live.
All right, I wasn't sure if you wanted to say it. So, look, the reason I'm doing is I love a book with a map, don't you, Carol?
Well, and I'm just glad he's living in Richmond, because I'm not far from you. I might be stalking you now. No, can I just ask you a question? I tried to write a novel once. Old Vine there's written a very good novel. It really is.
Don't stop, because he won't like celebrities writing novels.
No,
but I don't mind celebrities writing novels as long as they're good.
It's a very good novel. It's a very good novel. And I started to write it, but, I worked out, I knew that people would have worked out who the killer was very early on, and I got a bit bored when I got to 40,000 words. I mean, how do these ideas come to you?
That's a good question.
They don't come to me.
You've got a different kind of brain, haven't you?
Look, everything in the world has a story attached to it. When I go through a day, the people I meet, like yourself and Ben here, or Jeremy again coming to a studio, everything that happens to me in my life suggests stories of one sort or another. And I have probably 20 ideas a day, and the secret of my life is to find the good idea, the one really good idea. I mean, I went to an office just yesterday, and the 2 receptionists on my desk were really rude to me. And I thought, wow, this is a story. Can you imagine a multinational business that starts losing customers and their business starts to fold, and they don't realise that it's all because of 2 rude receptionists? That's the beginning of a story.
Do you know what I want you to do?
Terrible.
Your best 5 ideas, keep them. Give me your 15th one and see what I can do with that of your 20 ideas a day.
This, by the way, is a crossbow murder. And I follow crossbow murders quite with some interest, because they're very rare. And there was one about 3 years ago, and I wondered if you'd maybe seen that.
It's not based on that. I mean, the point is that in this country, choosing a murder weapon is difficult, because fortunately we have such strong gun laws, so therefore people don't have guns. And when you think about it, I don't particularly like violent murders. Murder stories aren't about murder, they're about character, about lives, about people.
Agatha always used poison.
Well, poison is a wonderful murder weapon, and in fact, in the book I'm writing at the moment, it's poison. So
is
that's
it? Right.
very useful. But even that's not easy to get hold of. You can make it yourself, but it's tricky.
So what's your preferred, if Agatha Christie's was poison, what would be your preferred murder weapon?
I very much like the crossbow because it is violent and quite shocking, and it's also a little bit unusual, and it even has a slight smile to it. You think about William Tell and everything. And I can believe that in Richmond there would be somebody who was a member of an archery club who had an old crossbow down in their garage.
Well, that's what I think. If you're solving the murder as the author, and you're not the author doesn't know the plot, that's what's so interesting about these books. You just simply go into the Richmond Close where it's set and you said, right, who owns a crossbow? Because that's going to narrow it down.
Well, actually, the fun of these books is, of
Disney,
course,
think of that.
If Hawthorne doesn't solve the crime,
yes,
I don't have a book. And that's always a tension in these books.
And I know the victim in this, Giles Kenworthy, is a nightmare neighbour. Is it based on anyone you know?
I have been very lucky to have always had delightful neighbours, but just think how many people in London live next door or above or below somebody they cannot stand.
Do you think we are? I mean, I feel I'm obsessed with whodunits. You know, so
I love them.
Why? There's just an insatiable appetite. Well, do you read them, Ben?
Yeah, love them.
Yeah.
Love Anthony's, love all of them. Why is it? I don't know. It's just a thrill, isn't it?
But some of them now, don't you think? Have you ever written a Midsomer Murder?
I created the show.
You stupid me.
Yeah.
Well, you need to get back there because the latest one was just stupid.
He did Foyle's War. This guy.
I know, Foyle's War I love.
Yeah.
Foyle's War is very clever.
But if I can answer the question you posed a moment ago, why the interest in murder mysteries? It's because they always end in absolute truth. And if you think about it, one of the things that we have in short supply in this day and age, what with social media, 24-hour news, conspiracy theories, and post-truth, is actual truth. And a murder mystery ends with healing, with a community that comes together, with the truth revealed, the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and there is a wonderful satisfaction in starting a book knowing that it will come to such a satisfying conclusion.
Wonderful. Well, there it is. Anthony Horowitz, Close to Death. It's so good to see you. And we didn't ask Anthony. Oh, now I'm going to blooming well bring it up. Well, traditionally, whenever Anthony comes in, we talk to him about the moment he accidentally stabbed himself. But today we're not going to do that.
It was a knife, a steak knife, the right-hand leg, and you even once showed a picture of all the blood during it. It was shocking.
So he dropped a steak knife, and his instinct was to snap his legs together to catch it.
And the hilt on one side of a leg drove the blade on the other side of a leg and nicked the artery.
Yeah.
And within 1 second, my whole trouser leg was bright red.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And how that hasn't appeared in one of your books, I have no idea.
Can't we not just talk to him all day, dump the debate?
No, well, but it's something. The next story actually is relevant, Auntie. This is about Dubai Airport. Have a look, because they've got. I can't believe it's Dubai. It looks like it's Gatwick. But they've been flooded. They've had a year's worth of rain in one day, and it's relevant to you, Anthony, because I think your sister-in-law is there.
No, my daughter-in-law and my 8-month-old grandson are both
Lord.
out there somewhere.
And they can't get back.
And they have been having a terrible time. They're out. My daughter-in-law is on business there, and journeys that should take half an hour take 4 hours to get to the conference.
It seems like they're not. They're not prepared for rain in the way that we are.
Usually 40
because that would be a normal Monday in Manchester.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, so that's Dubai, and it's caused a problem. In the Telegraph, there's a kind of... It's sort of a hilarious story, this. They decided to go to Belgium, some of the right-wing community, to basically talk about right-wing things. Fair enough. And the story here is that I think the mayor of Brussels, Anthony, decided to close it down.
Yes, that's right, because he was afraid, I think, of public disturbances. That was the excuse given for it. This has caused a great deal of outrage by the people who are participating, although I can't help but think they're probably quite pleased that it's actually put their rather boring conference with some rather horrible people in it onto the front pages of all the papers.
It's got far more coverage than it was ever going to get.
Apparently it only had 200 people there, now it's all over the front pages. So Nigel Farage was there. He said the efforts to shut down the gathering were monstrous, and he's been a victim of cancel culture. Have a listen.
Well, you see, I personally, in my last couple of years in Brussels, was banned from coffee shops, from pubs, from restaurants. So I know what cancel culture is. I know that deeply embedded here in Brussels, anybody that questions the doctrine of ever closer political union is effectively cancelled. The good news about today is global media has seen it. This is the new form of communism. No other perspective, no other view is allowed, and if it sees the light of day, it has to be banned and shut down.
So apparently when the police raided it, the first thing they did was go for the kitchen, because they thought if we shut the food down, everyone's going to leave. What do you think, Ben? Are they justified?
That doesn't say a great deal about the commitment of the members there, does it? They take away the pastries and they're off. No, I think it's a bit dodgy, actually. I mean, Nigel Farage on his high horse there. It's not the new fascism. But the idea that Suella Braverman and Nigel Farage are somehow a threat to public order, they're not going to start a riot in the streets of Brussels. I think even the Belgian Prime Minister has come out and condemned it. So what Farage is saying there about it being this cross-EU conspiracy, I think falls at the first hurdle, because actually the mayor's been condemned quite widely.
I'm just going to make... Oh, look, there's Farage now. I'm just going to make a point about Nigel. If you look at this picture in the Telegraph, and indeed the clip that we had, Nigel has lost quite a bit of weight, I think. And my theory about this is that's because he's getting ready for quite a big general election campaign. So I think he will probably lead the reform effort. And he thinks, I reckon, he might end up as leader of the Conservative Party after it. What do you think?
Well, it's a sort of a horrible thought, since he's
Is
never
it a
actually
horrible
managed.
Why?
He's never managed to win an election in his entire life anywhere, and it just simply shows
Well,
how
he
far
won
to the right the
Brexit. That was
Conservative
quite a
Party
big
might
one.
be moving, following, if they do indeed lose the next election, which does seem
But since
likely.
his UKIP days, I think he was hated probably 10 years ago by the majority of people in this country. I think he speaks for a lot of people in this country now. And I was watching the news coverage of this yesterday, and they were talking about public disorder. There was no one on the streets of Brussels. The only people that you could see there were coppers. There was nobody else. There was no public disturbance. And I think what he said there was quite right. If you disagree with the European credo and what they have to say, well, then you're not going to be allowed to speak. And that's exactly what happened.
OK,
there.
Anthony, in the Telegraph, there's a story about you can see that this is classic. You can go to places like the Acropolis and the Parthenon on your own and avoid the crowds, but you've got to pay.
Well, it's actually a group of 5, and you've got to pay £800 per person for this privilege, which does seem an enormous amount of money. Although I have to say, I remember when I was in my late teens breaking into the Colosseum in Rome at midnight and having it entirely to myself, and it really was worth £800. It's something I will never, ever forget. The moonlight, the cats, the sort of the echoes of all those people who had died in the gladiatorial combats. It was the experience of my lifetime.
get in?
But I'm not sure I would pay £800 for it.
It was
How did you get in?
Oh, in those days, because it was, it's not pre-terrorism and pre all the things that we have nowadays. It was climbing over a barrier and sort of running a wall.
And no cameras. But I mean, it's whether it's right to say, look, rich people can have special access. I don't know.
But rich people have all sorts of things that perhaps they shouldn't have. And if their money is going to be spent on the monuments and on protecting them and on, making them better for everybody else, I can't really see any harm in it.
Somebody, rather like your Acropolis story, or Colosseum, someone said, it was, I think, English Heritage run Stonehenge. Is that probably? It's not National Trust. Anyway, they said, do you want to come and see it? Because I go past it a lot. And I said, yeah. I was thinking, there's going to be a big crowd. I said, I don't want a big crowd. Come at sunrise. And they gave me the date. And it wasn't the solstice, but it was near. And you can imagine my kids were not keen, but we went, and it was so special because it was just the 4 of us. And we were in the stones and all that. And then I thought, I can see why people would pay for that, actually.
I've never been to Stonehenge.
Well, it's difficult to get. Back in the day, people would take a picnic. You'd sit on one of the stones and you'd chisel a bit off and take it home.
Oh.
They then decided that's not going to work anymore. So they've got there's quite a big exclusion zone.
That's the other side of this story, of course, is that mass tourism and people doing damage to all these different monuments is something that needs to be controlled.
Yeah.
Maybe the money from this will help with that too.
OK, in the Mirror, I just mentioned this, the Notre Dame version in Denmark. This is the Copenhagen Bourse, which is an old building. You know what? It doesn't look that old to me. I'm sorry, no disrespect intended, but it's been set on fire or gone fire. The steeple then comes down. Oh, this is a better angle. It's heartbreaking when this stuff goes. There was an opera house, wasn't there, that went in Italy about 20 years ago. That was bad. Glasgow had a bad fire.
Remember Windsor Castle?
Windsor Castle.
Which has been restored incidentally magnificent.
Yeah.
I was there quite recently and it is so beautiful. What they've done is incredible. Notre Dame, of course, has risen as well.
Yes,
so there is some good news in
But
this
I
story.
saw a documentary on the rebuilding of that, and those craftsmen just don't exist anymore. The people who were doing the.
But also,
what
when
they
you
did at
go
Windsor.
into Notre Dame and you're told it's 1,000 years old, you go, no, it's not. Built last year. And that's the problem for me, is when you rebuild it, it's not old anymore.
No, but
I know we lie to ourselves, we have to.
But you're replicating the genius
Replicating
of
isn't-
architects and...
And you are using some of the old materials. For example, in Windsor, they used all the tiny pieces of chandeliers they managed to restore and put them back up again.
Okay, well, that's a relief. Carol, in the Telegraph, sitting on the sofa has got to stop, and that's according to Greg Wallace, who's pretty fit, actually.
Well, he's fit now. He didn't used to be. He's obviously just got off his sofa recently. He didn't used to be super fit. I used to know Mr. Wallace quite well. And he's saying being a couch potato has become a British pastime that needs addressing. I don't disagree with that. He said that people. He's basically saying that people are lazy and they're not cooking themselves proper dinners or proper food. And it's all very well for him to say that, but, you know, he has a wife at home who doesn't work and housekeeper and whatever. So...
But he's all the time just doing press-ups, as far as I could tell.
Well, exactly. He's not cooking, is he? It's not him who's doing the cooking at home. It's his family.
You think
and
he's
probably
being
the
judgmental
housekeeper.
of those of us who like to sit on a sofa eating prawn crackers?
I like nothing more than doing exactly that
Well,
after a hard day.
Yes, exactly.
In my case,
I'd do it
it's
all
My
day.
chili
hobby.
crackers.
Yeah, well, what about you?
It doesn't even a hard day. I just do it all day.
Well, it's just-
No, I think he's spot on, to be honest. I mean,
Do
this is about working from home as well, isn't it? The more people are not getting on the tube,
Maybe,
getting
yeah.
on the train, getting on the bus, they're just sat at home eating.
Well, I mean, yeah, you know, you shouldn't be doing it for 15 hours a day, but I don't think there's anything wrong.
That's
with
where I'm
doing
going
it for
wrong,
a couple of
Carol, I
hours.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you don't. You just sit at the typewriter all day.
No, I also cook as well when I'm not working on my
Do
desk.
you?
Yeah, I love
Oh,
cooking.
good
It's
man.
You
half the price of processed food and of course much better for you.
I noticed that you came off Twitter recently.
I have dropped Twitter. That's absolutely
Yeah.
correct. And I have
A
to tell
lot
you,
of
I
people
feel
have.
wonderful for it. I cannot tell you how much happier. It's like coming out of hospital and leaving a disease behind you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think being off it, well, Storm is here. You're still on it, but we're both a
Well,
bit wary, aren't we?
In profile alone, yeah, I haven't actually ventured on it for ages, very sporadically, and I don't look at the timeline anymore because that is just a bin fire. They're feeding me stuff that I don't want to see.
Yeah.
Like horrible explicit videos.
That's
that
exactly the
there's
thing.
no
In the
warning.
old days, it was just me talking to writers and to friends.
Lovely.
But now, out of nowhere, come all these messages and images and invitations to look at stuff I don't want to. It really has become a cesspit.
Yeah, there is some. I mean, there's still good source of news. This is something from X, a post by the Reverend Grace Thomas, which has gone viral. And she wrote, "Don't do this, even if there's nothing behind your decision to sit next to me on an otherwise empty bus. It puts me on edge." So let's just. I'm not sure what we're seeing in the photo. Where is
So
she?
she's
in
sitting.
that?
I did actually see this.
Yeah.
One of the very few things that I did spot because it came up on my email. She's sitting in the corner seat there that you're seeing it from her view,
I
and this
see.
gentleman's come and sat right next to her. When you can see there, absolutely. There's
Oh, so she's got yeah. So a man dumping himself next to a woman when every other seat is empty. Carol, your view?
I would not like that. I would move.
Yeah.
I would actually get up and pretend I was
She was a
getting off
vicar,
and
but she
sit
wasn't
down
in
couch.
uniform. So he wasn't. He can't say he was asking for prayer.
And it's terrible that I think that. I mean, I shouldn't think that, you know. But I would, and I would think he had an ulterior motive for sitting beside me. So I would move away.
So okay, another thing that's wrong. Storm.
Do you not think that's slightly
No, I
unusual?
think it's
Would
weird.
you do it?
No,
I know
I
you
actually,
wouldn't.
funny enough, it's one of those things where men don't have an insight into the things that women go through every day. And I
Yeah,
speak as a father of young daughters. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty seedy.
Okay, and I take your point. I think that sometimes men don't have an insight, but in this occasion, if it was a man sitting there, I don't think you would have sat next to him.
No, you
No, I mean, clearly the
So-
guy needs to be given the once over.
well,
I would. I mean, I'm not saying spread him across a police Ford
No.
bonnet.
yes.
But I think just let's see what he's up
my
to.
overriding thought would be get close to other people. That's why I'd move away from it, so I could be near to other people.
But if you're a vicar, on the other hand, you are supposed to be welcoming your flock.
she's a woman. With
Okay,
women's
all right.
instincts.
It's clearly wrong. It's clearly
It was a
bad.
very interesting tweet, actually.
It
you're
was an
right.
interesting-
Or what do you call them now? If they're not, it's not Twitter.
Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, Anthony won't have
Very
seen it because he's come
interesting.
off it. There we are. That's what you're missing out on.
I'm glad to be.